Carandiru is a Brazilian drama film based on a true story and released in the year 2003. The plot of the film follows a doctor, Drauzio Varela, who starts working towards AIDS prevention in Brazil's largest and most notorious prison, Carandiru, in Sao Paulo, which is dangerously overcrowded, holding 7,000 inmates instead of 4,000. The film starts in the Carandiru prison, where inmates are seen violently fighting with one another. The prison is in a disgusting condition, as 100 square foot cells are overcrowded with prisoners. Among them, a boy called Lula is furious with another prisoner, Dagger, as he is the murderer of Lula's father. The two of them engage in a filthy conversation, and Ebony, the head of the prisoners, is unable to control them. Just then, the prison owner, Mr. Pires, arrives with a doctor named Drauzio Varela. After hearing ferocious voices from the cells, Lula is devastated to find out that his mother paid Dagger to kill her husband. His cellmate comforts him, but Mr. Pires orders Lula and Dagger to strip off and present themselves in front of him. He then inquires Lula why he ended up in the prison, and it turns out that he found his wife sleeping with another man, after which he shot him thrice and feels no remorse about it. Later, Ebony, who is also the head of the kitchen, asks the inmates to return his kitchen knife that has gone missing. He gives them one last chance to return it, and finally he retrieves it back. After solving the dispute, Mr. Pires shows Dr. Varela the entire prison. The prison holds a total of 7,000 prisoners, and Varela is surprised to see it. He's come to the prison to test inmates for HIV and wants to develop awareness among them to work towards eliminating the AIDS epidemic. Mr. Pires tells him that it's quite tricky to do so, as not all the prisoners will cooperate with him. Despite getting discouraged, Varela enters one of the cells to start his mission. He notices a man named Miro infected with tuberculosis spitting in an open space and asks the prison staff to get him isolated. But since the prison doesn't have much space, the staff is helpless and has to keep Miro with the other inmates. Varela then starts conducting medical checkups of the prisoners, one by one, whilst listening to their stories. He asks each one of them about their sex life and whether or not they take IV drugs. After inquiring, blood samples of the prisoners are taken. At the end of the first day, Varela winds up his work, and before leaving, he's concerned to see the inhumane and unhygienic condition of the prison. Ebony asks him if he's going to return back, but Varela leaves quietly. The next day he returns back, as he genuinely cares about the prisoners and wants to bring change. He starts with the routine checkups, and while checking Ebony, he asks him about the story that landed him in the prison. The scene cuts to Ebony's story, where he is arranged to do a jewelry store job with two of his friends, Fatso and Brislace, on Christmas. After robbing the store, Brislace asks Ebony how they will split the robbed jewels, and in the heat of the moment, Ebony shoots Brislace to death. Fatso is shocked to see this and points the gun at Ebony to kill him, but is unable to shoot. After that, the two of them dump Brislace's body in a junkyard. Later, Fatso turns Ebony in, as he is scared of getting killed by Brislace's brother. But he himself was also imprisoned for being an accomplice to the murder. 2 years later, while escaping the prison through a tunnel, Falso died, as he is unable to pass through it. This is how Ebony's story ends after Varela gives him some anti-stress pills so he can sleep at night peacefully. A moment later, a trans female named Lady Di enters the doctor's room and asks Varela to get her checked. She claims that she does not do drugs and has never taken any needles. However, she has had sex with thousands of partners. The scene cuts to a young boy named Dudite entering the prison. He's struggling to find a cell for himself. As he enters Dagger's cell, Dagger asks him to pay for the bed or else he'll have to sleep on the floor. But just then, Dudite's friend, Zico, who's an old prisoner, arrives and helps him. Next, a prisoner named Highness is seen hiding joints in the toilet flush and ends up getting bitten by a rat on his finger. Since orders in the prison are entirely controlled by the prisoners themselves, Lula operates Highness's finger while smoking a joint. Dr. Varela is surprised to see Lula operating while being high. He checks Highness's finger and sees 2 wedding rings. Highness then narrates the story of how he met 2 beautiful ladies. The scene cuts to when he first met Dalva, a beautiful white girl who ditches her fiancé to get together with Highness. They got married and had 3 kids, but Highness did not stop stealing. Instead, he went up market and started robbing imported cars. Later, he met Rosarine, a sexy, attractive woman in a bar, and started flirting with her. Dalva catches him red-handed and starts quarreling with Rosarine. To keep up with both the ladies, Highness divided his time and rented a room to keep Rosarine there. But later, he's angry to find her cheating with his friends. One night he goes into his room only to find Rosarine sleeping on the bed, and the two engage in some steamy lovemaking scene. The next morning, Dalva catches them sleeping together, and out of jealousy she sets the bed on fire. Rosarine and Highness suddenly wake up, and seeing Dalva's anger, Rosarine reveals that she's pregnant with Highness's child. Later the police arrive and Highness takes the blame for arson on himself to keep Dalva out of trouble. But since the police were after him for other crimes as well, he was sentenced to 16 years of imprisonment, which later reduced to 10. Next, Zico is injected his cellmate with IV drugs. He's badly addicted to drugs and can't seem to control it. He even sells it to all the other prisoners. When he sees Dustete reading a letter from his sister, Francie, he keeps asking him if she has mentioned him in the letter. Dustete tells Francie about how Zico is doing. He adds that if Francie finds out about his crack addiction, she will completely stop mentioning him in the letters. Just then Ezekiel, another prisoner who takes cracks from Zico, arrives to give him a surfboard instead of the money that he owes to Zico. Zico loses his cool, beats him up and orders him to pay the debt as soon as possible. Later, Varela is seen taking a round of the prison's infirmary and feels empathetic to see the patient's deteriorating conditions. Zico, an old-age prisoner, is released from jail after he completes his sentence, but while leaving, he deliberately beats an officer, due to which he is kept in solitary confinement. Next, the prisoners are frightened to see Zico unconscious and escort him to Varela to get him checked. Zico then narrates his story of how he and Dustete grew up together. When Zico was a kid, he was abandoned by his mother, after which Dustete and his sister, Francie, took him with them. Zico took care of Dustete at every step of his life. However, he ended up in jail for dealing with drugs. Then Varela asked Dustete how he got to the prison, and he narrates his story. One day when he was at home, he saw his sister arriving home in a miserable state. When Dustete inquires her about what happened, she tells him that she was harassed by two men. Later, Dustete reports the harassers to the police and borrows a gun from Zico to protect himself from the harassers. One night, the harassers come after him, and Dustete uses his gun to fire on one of them. He then chases another guy and shoots him in the chest, after which he ended up in jail. In the next scene, Zico complains to Ebony about Ezekiel, that he isn't returning the money that he owes him, and asks his permission to kill Ezekiel. Ebony asks him to calm down and tells him that he'll speak to Ezekiel to arrange the money from his family. In the next scene, Varela is seen showing the lungs x-ray of the TB patient. Miro to Noe, who's Varela's assistant. Varela then asks Antonio, Miro's friend, how they got imprisoned. Turns out Miro's wife turned Miro against Antonio after he caught her cheating on Miro. Miro and Antonio ended their friendship, after which Antonio got caught committing a robbery. Later, Miro finds out the truth about his wife and he kills her in public. Both the friends are reunited in prison, and Antonio has been helping Miro ever since to deal with TB. In the next scene, the prisoners are seen enjoying a show on the Visitors' Day. The families have arrived to meet their loved ones. Francie comes with her mother and friend, Caterina, who likes Dustete. Zico is also ecstatic to see Francie, but Francie is worried about his weak health. Highness is seen making out with Dalva, but soon finds out Rosarine has also arrived to meet him. Both Dalva and Rosarine come face to face and start fighting. Highness calms them down but is confused when he's asked to choose among his wives. Francie arrives in Zico's cell to have a heart-to-heart with him, but all Zico does is inquire about what the harassers did to her. Dagger is seen entering a ward with AIDS patients to meet his friend. On the other hand, Ezekiel's sister arrives in prison to give Zico the money, and Ebony is informed about it. Antonio's wife comes to meet him and apologizes to him for not trusting him. Lady Di's father is pissed after Noe asks him for Lady Di's hand in marriage. Soon after, Mr. Pires finds a prisoner who committed suicide by hanging himself in the AIDS patient ward. On the other hand, Noe and Lady Di are in happy tears to find out that they tested negative for HIV and that they can get married. But just then, Noe reveals that he's getting released soon. Later, Ebony asks Ezekiel to shift to him the yellow wing as he didn't pay his debt to Zico. Finally, Chico is freed from solitary confinement after spending many days there. In the cell, Zico starts hallucinating, and Dustete is worried to see his crazy behavior. He stops him from smoking the joint, as his drug addiction is the reason why he's unable to get a grip on himself. Exasperated, Zico pours hot boiling water on Dustete during the night, killing him. In the next scene, Noe and Lady Di are seen getting married. Noe raises a toast to thank Varela as he taught him enough medicine, due to which he plans on opening a clinic once he's released. The other inmates gang up on Zico and stab him multiple times to avenge the death of Dustete. Later, Highness manipulates Ezekiel to take the blame on himself after he's already suffering from AIDS. He bribes him with crack and gives him the knife from which Zico was stabbed. So Ezekiel does as he was told, and he takes the blame on himself. Chico is finally released from prison after he bids farewell to the inmates. Dagger's concerned that he's going mad after having horrible nightmares of Zico, and so he goes to see Varela. Varela tells him that it is guilt driving him nuts. To overcome his guilt, Dagger accepts Christianity and admits Jesus to be his God. Later, it's sports day at the prison, and the inmates are seen playing football that was coached to them by Varela. After the match opens, Varela leaves for home after saying bye to Beard, a prisoner with anger issues. Just then, Beard gets into a fight with another inmate for hanging clothes in his territory. When the football team arrives, while celebrating their victory, they witness the prisoners fighting like crazy, as if hell was broken loose. The prisoners lose control and destroy everything in the prison. They even set the prison on fire. To take control of the situation, a riot squad arrives, but they're puzzled to see such aggressive behavior of the inmates. Mr. Pires arrives and warns the inmates to return to their cells, but the inmates demand better conditions as the prison was overpopulated. The inmates ask him to push back the riot squad, but Pires warns them one last time to surrender their weapons. So the prisoners comply and start dropping their weapons one by one. The riot squad breaks into the prison building, and the inmates start running into their cells as they know they can't fight the officers with knives and sticks. Some of the HIV-infected inmates try to play smart but are shot dead by the riot squad. After witnessing the killings, the rest of the prisoners are scared and rush back to their cells. All that can be seen in the prison is chaos and disorder. Eventually, hundreds of prisoners are sprayed with bullets and mercilessly killed. Highness manages to survive by hiding himself in the cell. Ebony and his child are spared as they were not involved in causing any of the trouble. Noe and Lady Di's life is also spared as they were watching a movie during the riot. Lula is not killed as the officer finds him resembling his son. After performing a huge massacre, the riot squad summons the prisoners on the ground that were not killed during the riot and forces them to say, "Long live the riot squad." At the end of the riot, Davilson, a young prisoner, is seen reading a letter from his mother while blood is flooding through the stairs of the prison. The film ends with Varela narrating that he was sent to Carandiru prison to work on the prevention of AIDS. He made new friends, heard memorable stories, and learned medicine there. The epilogue at the end of the film states that 111 men were killed at the Sao Paulo Detention Center on October 2, 1992. On September 15, 2002, the remaining inmates were transferred, and on December 9th, Carandiru was blown into pieces. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and also subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.